Starting from Mamoiada, which is a little town really in the middle of nowhere in the Barbagia. We are on the higher hills, mountains, in the middle of Sardinia. It's a place that has been forgotten for hundreds of years, and only recently people are getting interested in this little town, mainly for a ritual that is called the Mamutones. Armando Tajano, which is one of the directors of our documentaries, has been doing a beautiful long documentaries on Mamoiada. We're going to link it down there, which tells the magic of this feast that is happening every year at January 17. We were lucky enough to go there twice, and Armando actually been there twice. I've been there once. They wear these strange masks that are probably belong to a lost ritual related with possibly Dionysus and the rebirth of nature in after Christmas time. And so it's something that is pagan and Christian at the same time. I'm more pagan than Christian. I'm actually referring to this feast because it's interesting. Most of the feast that we have now in Italy has been commercialized, has been somehow strongly Christianized, first of all, and then they became a kind of a cheaper commercial fairs where you sell like little gummies and stuff and smoothies. Has nothing to do with the local tradition. What is interesting in Mamoiada, you won't find a lot of restaurants and bars or gadget and souvenir places. It's not even a fancy village. You don't have a middle-aged church. The houses are kind of recent. And so it's an atmosphere where it's wine. The wine is actually the ritual that actually connects everyone. And when I was there, we did a tasting of Mamoiada wines. The first time it was like 15 years ago. And so that was a moment where I was shocked discovering such an incredibly quality of wine where nobody was bottling. There was only Sedilesu at that moment and Montisci. Sanna was not even bottling at that moment. Simone was still in Australia working as a chef. Then he came back, Simone Sedulesu, this guy here. So 15 years ago, I think that there were only 3 winemakers that were bottling. Today, there are 35. I personally consider myself, with the incredible help of Dario Cappelloni, responsible for some of this bottling. I'm talking about Cadino, I'm talking about Pasquale Bonamici, Zappu, for example. All these winemakers were not even bottling the wine. What I'm talking about is a village that is 2,000 inhabitants and 500 winemakers. I used to make these jokes that even dogs make wine there. And it's actually a family business, but it's not even a business because they make wine for themselves. Maybe they sell a bit of the wine, but you have to go with your own jar because they don't have the bottle. And this is a tradition that has been part of Italy for the last 1,000 years, 2,000 years. But during the industrialization of the agriculture and the people moving from the villages to the cities, most of them have abandoned this tradition of making the wine from themselves, or they started to use some chemicals, a lot of sulfites and so on, and blending all this vino sfuso, what we call it. We used to say that the vino del contadino, the farmer wines in the 60s and 70s became a bad version of the industrial wine in most of the cases. And so when I arrived in Mamoiada, I perceived that something was preserved. This kind of it used to be like a kind of an El Dorado for me, finding a place that was not touched by industrialization. When it comes to wine, usually it's a bad thing. Now, when it comes to Simone is a young guy that he's part of a family, the Sedilesu family. The Sedilesu family is like the Gaia of Mamoiada in the sense that, I don't know if this is a compliment or not, is the family that first started at the end of the 90s to bottle the wine. They were like completely like unicorn at that time. And they have been seen by the local like strange people that they were trying to create a little business around wine that it was not conceived to be a business. And they, fast became kind of famous, but, nobody actually considered Mamoiada as a wine region, maybe only with Sedilesu. They were the first one that had discovered Granazza, which is a local white grape variety. They spent a lot of years trying to convince the Italian government to register that grape variety as an official grape variety. They finally achieved it, I think, in 2019. I think now we are buying 90% of the Granazza all over Mamoiada, so somehow we are supporting a lot of winemakers that are preserving local grape varieties in case of Granazza. Simone is the nephew of Salvatore Sedilesu, and he started to make his own wines 6 years ago. and we immediately loved the approach. Simone and Federica are an incredible couple. They had a baby recently, and they are working together. And it's interesting because Federica is half French and half Sardinian, and she worked for Romanè Conti for more than 4 years. It's interesting how a lady, a winemaker that works for Romanè Conti, which is the most important winery in the world, period, and she decided after that they offered her a stable job. She decided to come back to Mamoiada to make her own wine. This actually proves how attractive is this land, how they are somehow linked with the local tradition. They're linked with their vineyards, with their stones. We're talking about an archaeological place that has one of the highest archaeological sites of the entire world. There are more than 8,000 nurages, which are these strange round buildings that are probably the ancestors of the local castle, of the Middle Age castles, of the castrum from the Roman Empire. And even the vineyard somehow looks like kind of sculptures, because every little plant is a little freestanding bush, and you have to prune them separately. We're talking about vineyards that are up to 60, 70, sometimes even 100 years old. So Simone and Federica are working together in the cellar. They make two separate wines, but they work together. I don't know if they fight or they argue, but it's interesting how the wines from Simone tend to be slightly stronger than the wine from Federica, a bit more elegant and complex. And I used to say the wines are like dogs, they tend to look like their owners. And this is a perfect example of how a couple, they are somehow working together, making different wines, but also helping each other. The wines from the Federica were released for the very first time last year. They will be part of the wine club soon. But with this one here, this is a little blend. It's actually a simpler version of their Cannonau. It's a Cannonau that is more easy to drink. And we're going to talk about this wine, opening it. I will repeat over and over, this is not a private label, which means private label can be a tricky thing. And we are trying to, my goal is in 3-4 years to have like 90% or 100%, and 90% of the wines for our wine club, for our tastings in Rome and New York, to be all private wines. Private wine, what does that mean? It means that it's not just like, we take a bottle of wine, we change the label, and we write down this is a Roscioli Wine Club wine. No, it's a wine that technically did not exist. It doesn't exist. For example, this is called the Burda, and it's actually a wine that is a blend of two different barrels with a bit of it's a vasque. So this wine was created by Simone with our help for us. So it's a version that I ask to produce, because sometimes Cannonau is really strong in alcohol. It can be a bit heavy. So I asked him to create a Cannonau which was not as heavy as the normal Cannonau. So it was an experiment that I think went well. It's only 3,000 bottles, so we're going to reproduce it next year. This label was designed by Daniela Pareschi. Daniela Pareschi is the same one that has designed all our superheroes, Spider-Man and stuff. She's taking care of the graphic designing most of our labels. And so we're going to open it now. Cannonau, as I was telling you, is the Sardinian name of Grenache. Sardinians would say that Grenache is the French name of Cannonau. In this conflict, who started first, I'm not really interested in it, because French used to say we brought Cannonau, we brought Grenache to Sardinia in the 17th century. Spanish said no, we brought it in the 16th century, 15th. And but I have to say that they found in a recent archaeological site the seeds of this grape variety that are more than 3,500 years old. So I'm sorry for our French and Spanish friends. Cannonau is, and it was, Sardinian. Now, I believe that grape varieties can travel. I'm not one of those people that think that, one grape variety, I have to stay in one place. But this is the thing. So we're going to now try to taste the wine. You know that I am not really a fan of wine descriptions, and I'm actually doing these videos also with my colleagues and my employees, and also I will do it with you, trying to study a different approach to wine tasting. Usually memory is a good thing. The problem with wine description is sometimes goes too much in technical details. It doesn't really help. I will try to give you an emotion towards the wine, starting from my emotion. It's an experiment that I wish you should do it at home. Close your eyes, put the nose inside the glass, and try to perceive something related with memories, especially where this wine is bringing to you. For me, of course, I am strongly linked. I know the place, and I immediately, when I smell a wine that is coming from Mamoiada, it goes in my mind immediately. The sheep, I perceive all the natural herbs that are grown there. You have sage, you have rosemary, oregano, and you have a mirto, for example. So the mirto is one of the elements. It's called macchia mediterranea, or garrigue, if you want to be fancy with your French friends. The garrigue is all those herbs that are around the Mediterranean Sea. It's a smell that if you come from Italy or from Spain or from Greece or from Israel or from Lebanon or Northern Africa, you will immediately, or Turkey, you will immediately recognize it. Actually, I call it the Mediterranean community, in the sense that there is a smell that is strongly related with this iodine, seaside, and herbs. What I like is this wine has got a nice tannins, slightly green tannins, but nice, a bit of a bite on the front. It doesn't have the heaviness of most of the Cannonau. It's nice and refreshing with a beautiful, full finish. And in terms of pairing, I asked my colleague Raniero if he could bring some Fiore Sardo. Fiore Sardo is a wine, is a cheese from Sardinia. It's slightly smoked, so it's ideal for. Oh, this is a beautiful, beautiful setup. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Raniero. So we are in front here of. This is a single portion for a single portion for one person. No, I'm joking. This is actually the Fiore Sardo from Pinna. By the way, if you come from, if you want to find this cheese, this is one of the few cheeses that we can import in US. So you're going to find it even in our restaurant in New York. It's an incredible cheese. Usually, I love to call this like the ideal marriage. An ideal marriage is when two people together, they help each other. And I would say that this wine, it may be that it's got a bit of a rough tannin. By itself, it could be a wine that need a bit of a help. The same problem with the Pecorino Sardo, the Fiore Sardo in this specific case, that tend to be slightly bit too salty. So the idea that this wine is helping the cheese and this cheese is helping the wine. This is, to me, is the ideal, iconic regional pairing. Usually going for regional pairing is the easiest trick, especially if you come from Italy. Wow. This is, I call it the endless pairing. We're going to probably redo this pairing with the De Vida, Pasquale Bonamici, which is a wine that is slightly more alcohol, a bit more deep. In this specific case, I would say that the wine is the companion of the cheese. Maybe with the stronger wine,